Part of your mediator responsibilities when preparing for the mediation session are to set up the rooms in which the mediation will occur. This presentation provides an overview of room setup so that you are positioned to welcome the participants, keep their attention during your opening statement, and settle in to hear their response to, "What would you like to discuss today?" This presentation is accompanied by pre- and post surveys that you need to complete. If you have not completed the pre-survey, pause the video now and complete it before watching the remainder of the video. The link to the survey is in Blackboard under Course Materials for this topic. Earlier in the training, we talked about some of what the mediator needs to do to prepare for mediation. In this presentation, I will focus on the last two: check and improve rooms and set up rooms. There are several things that you can get out of this presentation. I'll start by focusing on what mediators should consider when setting up the room. We have a version of the ideal room setup to share with you. Some rooms, however, cannot accommodate the ideal setup, so I will preview some of the challenges that you may encounter. Whether you are borrowing space or using your own, mediation rooms come in different shapes and with different components. It is important to remember that the way that you set up the room leaves an impression on the participants and can impact how both the participants and mediators experience the session. Above all, the room setup must keep in mind the participants' expectation of fairness and our intention of fairness. The Workplace Mediation Service Manager books the rooms for in-person mediations. Room selections are based on availability, preference and needs of the participants, and convenience for all. We reserve two rooms, one for the group session and other for private caucuses. The mediators will need to set up and possibly clean up in both rooms prior to the mediation session. As a mediator, I have wiped down tables, rearranged a slew of chairs to declutter the space around the table, and safely moved tables to help make the space welcoming. You should be prepared to tidy a space and make it more presentable. Mediation sessions are made up of several parts. Mediators can control only a few of those, that being ourselves and the space. The mediation standards and agreement to mediate, which we have talked about and you have a copy of, and your mediation training are the anchor for what we control. You have options in how you set up the meeting space, and during setup, you should consider several factors, including 5 that will be covered here. We are grounding the room setup in providing privacy, which aligns with the confidentiality of mediation, safety and comfort for everyone, impartiality of the mediators, and facilitating communication and visibility. The ideal setup, which I will show next, is simple to attain when we have the right ingredients. I'll explain the ideal room setup based on those 5 room setup factors. This room will have 2 mediators, M1 and M2, 2 participants, P1 and P2, 2 whiteboards, and a table. This ideal setup includes a plain room without distractions. Let's start with privacy. Having a private mediation room that prevents outsiders from looking in through the windows or glass indoors helps to maintain confidentiality. In this ideal room, there is no glass that allows others to see in. It has a rectangular table in the center. When thinking about safety and comfort, think about physical safety and the participants' comfort in expressing themselves. Those are always important to consider, even if you assume that the participants will not get in a physical fight, or if the participants have said that they will feel comfortable expressing themselves in mediation. In terms of physical safety, in this ideal setup, the mediators, M1 and M2, are closest to the door. The participants, P1 and P2, are at the short ends of the table. If a physical fight were to happen between the participants, the mediators would have a clear path to walk out the door. Also, for physical safety reasons, the participants are separated by the length of the table. When it comes to comfort with expressing oneself, having physical space between the participants is important because it can help keep a participant from feeling hovered over by another participant. If they prefer to sit closer together, the participants will move their chairs. Participants can glean that the mediators might be taking sides based on where the mediators and participants are placed. The impartiality of the mediators is represented in this ideal setup by the mediators being equal distance from the participants. And neither mediator is placed right next to a participant, which could have given the impression that each participant has its own mediator. Remember, you are there to facilitate the conversation and you do not take sides. Participants can also perceive partiality based on images and objects in the room. In this ideal setup, there are no images on the wall or extra objects. Communication between the mediators and between participants and the mediators is facilitated by this seating arrangement. The mediators may want to communicate with each other, and being next to each other makes that easy. They can write and share their notes in a way that is not disruptive to the mediation. The distance in between the mediators and participants is the same and allows everyone to speak at a similar volume level and still be heard. When it comes to visibility, there are no obstructions in this ideal setup. Since the mediators are on the same side of the table, the participants can look at both mediators without turning their heads, and everyone can be easily seen and see others. There is more than one ideal setup. What you have just seen is one option. Sometimes the ideal room is not available, so the mediators will need to do their best to provide a space that addresses the 5 room setup factors. The Workplace Mediation Service will inform you of known variables in rooms. Let's go into some of the setup challenges that you might face as a mediator. Tables come in different shapes and sizes. Some may be too long, others circular. If the table is long, the seating setup may be different than that in the ideal room to facilitate communication. Do you use only half the table? That's up to you. A circular table might mean less individual table space and everyone might be closer to each other. In the ideal room that was shown, there were 2 mediators and 2 participants. Any mediation may have more people. There may be mediations with 2 mediators, 4 participants, 1 or more support persons, and an observer. You will need to arrange the seating for everyone in a way that aligns with their role in the mediation and maintains safety and comfort, visibility, communication, and mediator impartiality. And then there's the other unexpecteds. Small or huge room, loud noises, a column that could obstruct visibility, windows that do not allow privacy, too many chairs. You may encounter those or other unexpected things. With 2 rooms at your disposal, one may be more ideal than the other. As the mediator, you get to decide which room is best for the group session and which is best for caucuses. Room setup can impact experience for the participants and mediators, and variables to the ideal setup could put a wrinkle in the idea of a smooth mediation or leave a negative impression. Prior to the session starting, discuss and address any room setup challenges with your co-mediator so that during the mediation session, you all can focus and work together. And remember that after the mediation session, you should leave the rooms clean and set up in a way that matches the original arrangement. Now that you have watched the video, please complete the post survey. The link to the survey is in Blackboard under course materials. You will receive a copy of your completed survey by email, and during our next synchronous session, we will discuss the post survey results and answer questions.